Hello, my name's Alison McIver, and this podcast is about the importance of self-care for those participating in clinical research projects. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet and learn today, wherever we are. For me, I'm on Wurundjeri land. We recognise the strength, resilience and capacity of the traditional owners, and we pay our respects to elders past and present, and to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who may be watching or listening to this podcast. As I mentioned, my name's Alison McIver and I have lived experience of 2 rare genetic conditions. I'm one of 5 people who have developed an information kit that focuses on the importance of self-care for those participating in clinical research projects. The other group members will now introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Anna Urbanowitz and I'm an occupational therapist and researcher. I work at Deakin University in partnership with Kids Plus, which are a therapy provider for young children with disabilities.
And my name's Jodie Adams and I'm here as a lived experience advisor.
Hi, my name is Willika Walsh and I'm in this space wearing 3 hats. I am the mum of 2 children with additional needs, so I have lived experience. I'm also a physiotherapist, so I have a clinical background and also work as a researcher.
Hi, I'm Ingrid Sutherland. I'm here with 2 hats. I'm a clinical nurse consultant at the Children's Hospital in Neurodevelopment and Disability, and I'm also a clinician researcher.
So the concept of self-care, or taking care of physical, mental, emotional and spiritual aspects of your life to support health and wellness, is not new. However, ensuring that self-care is included as part of clinical research projects is currently not standard practice. This podcast is a key resource in the information kit we've developed about the importance of self-care for those participating in clinical research projects. I'll mention the other resources at the end of the podcast. So, why is it important to make time for self-care when participating in clinical research projects? Jodie, perhaps you'd like to answer that as a lived experience advisor.
Yeah, well, from my lived and living experience, I feel like it's important to be supported throughout the whole research project. So this is from the onboarding session at the very beginning, information provided. So looking at what are the benefits, what are the risks, what support is available. And I think from my experience, it's been inconsistent. So as to the support that is provided. So I find it helpful sometimes after a session to debrief, and being allocated a support person is really important, to look at what difficult sort of memories might come up from lived experience. So my involvement is about contributing to the shape of a better future, but it's also important to have that access to support and have the choice to talk to somebody, message someone, perhaps after the meeting, in between meetings, not to underestimate things that might come up for different reasons for people who are participating. So in order to be involved in research, that self-care of formal and informal supports is really important for the beginning and to make sure that that I'm able to contribute to the best of my ability. And I think it's the same for everybody involved in research projects, whether that be from lived experience, clinicians, researchers, just that everyone has access to support that's needed, and ensuring a safe space is created.
And Anna, do you think it's important that researchers and clinicians make time for this as well?
Yeah, definitely, Alison. As Jodie mentioned, if you're having meetings, workshops with lived experience advisors, often difficult memories can come up. People can talk about tricky experiences that they've had. And it's really important that we look after ourselves when we're hearing those experiences, that we don't lead ourselves to burnout or experiencing vicarious trauma. Also, sometimes as researchers, if you're kind of in charge or in lead of kind of bringing this group of people together and having meetings, you feel a lot of responsibility around making sure that the meeting goes smoothly, that everyone has a say, that everyone's looked after. And that can be sometimes really stressful or a little bit tricky. So I think it's really important that as researchers, we also take time to practice self-care and look after ourselves so that we can show up as our best selves and do a really good job and make sure that we are able to kind of continue with the project and have a really good quality project where everyone feels able to speak up and supported.
Right. So there are a range of self-care activities or strategies that people engage in. What are some examples that have been effective for you, and perhaps why do you think they work? Jodie, what are some things that you do?
Yeah, well, sometimes during sessions, having the option to write my responses in the chat is really helpful for me. Might be something I want to contribute, but might be difficult for me to speak up about. Having the option to email privately after the session is also helpful, and that minimizes vicarious trauma as well. Being offered flexibility to contribute if we have other circumstances that are difficult, and taking a break sometimes, for researchers or whoever's facilitating to let people know if they need a break. That's also helpful. And I guess following sessions, for me to have a self-care plan is really important. So it might be activities that nourish me and replenish, the replenishing. So I might have a cup of tea, I might play some music, go for a walk, make a nice meal. And one thing I really enjoy about the end of some sessions is that everyone goes around the group and shares something that they're going to do for their own self-care following the session. And I think sharing that between everybody and seeing all the different things that, they're going to do afterwards, leaves the session on a really positive and, nourishing note, which is good.
That's great. Willika, how about you? What are some things that work for you?
Yeah, I'm very similar to Jodie within the sessions, and I think it's very important to have the flexibility within the sessions for all the team members involved to be able to participate in a way that suits and meets their needs. So that I think is really important and helps with everybody's self-care within the group. Then definitely outside to look after, my self-care outside the group. It varies, and I have a range of different things that I can do. So I like catching up with spending time with my family, whether that be going to a sporting event with one of my sons or going to watch a movie with, one of my other sons. I like to go for a walk with my dog to, just have some downtime, and also sometimes just sit and rest with a nice cup of hot chocolate and just relax. I think having flexibility and having a range of different things for your self-care activities outside the group is important as well, because what you're needing at particular times will be different, and also the time that you have at those particular times may be different. So if you have a range that you can, I guess, pull from, I think is very important, and that's why it works for me. I just sort of try and do the one that will suit at that particular time for the needs that I have at that particular time.
It's great. I'm definitely a fan of walking the dog myself, I have to say. So in the projects you've been part of, has self-care been mentioned or been a part of these? Jodie, what's your experience there?
Yeah, through most of the projects I've been involved with, there has been, there's been discussions about self-care, but I wouldn't say it's all of them, and that's why I feel quite passionate about having a well-being self-care toolkit, because it's really important, especially for, from my lived experience. Sometimes, challenging topics are brought up, can be quite, people can be quite emotional. So there's sometimes like a contact person afterwards. I've found it really helpful when there's been peer support offered. And yeah, as I said, like earlier, it could be like via text message. It might be needing to debrief following a session. So it might have been something that another person has brought up, or it could be personal for me, something that's come up. So yeah, I think it's really important, but I'd like to see it be part of all research groups and projects for everybody that's involved, especially, lived experience clinicians and researchers, to have an option for someone to talk to, and just be offered other phone numbers as well. And some have a wellbeing plan and ask about what supports you already have in place, or if you'd like to have support provided. So I think it's really important to have those choices, but to be consistent and offered with each research project. I feel that's really important.
And Anna, what's your experience? Is it something that's been mentioned, or do you think it's a bit of a gap?
I think to some extent it has been mentioned across the different projects that I've been a part of, but that extent varies. So, for example, in one project I've been part of, where we engaged a group of lived experience advisors, we had online meetings. Would kind of at the beginning of the meeting would have a check-in where people could put into the chat, I think, a different number or emoji to kind of give us an indication of where they were at, kind of emotionally, and how they were able to engage in that session. And often when bringing a group together for the first time, there is a bit of a discussion around kind of group norms and how the group will operate, and a discussion around how some people may share some difficult experiences, and that it is okay to kind of step away and take a break. And we often offer debriefs after sessions. However, I don't feel like this, I think we could be done better and to a greater extent and across the whole project from start to finish. So I think, as Jodie mentioned, I think my experience is that it does really vary at the moment.
When we talk about self-care in a project, at what point or points do you think it should be included? What's your view, Ingrid?
Thanks, Alison. I think it's like what Anna and Willika and Jodie have been talking about, that it needs to become a routine part of the project, and we need to just make it a normal part of the project. And we can do that by, that's the first thing that we do when we all join together to meet for the first time, is that we talk about self-care and acknowledge the importance of it, and then just embed it into the project as part of routine practice every time we meet or check in with each other, and just a reminder that self-care is important. And then we've got different tools to support us to be able to achieve self-care and to support each other as a research team. So basically I think we just need to work to bring it in from the beginning, and then regular checking in with everybody.
Right. And just another question to finish. If you had one piece of advice about self-care to give a research team, what would that be? Jodie, would you like to answer that one?
Yeah, I think it's important to recognise creating that safe space from the beginning and during each of the research sessions for everybody that's participating. So I think for everybody to have their own wellbeing plan from the beginning, and part of the onboarding process would be so that people can make an informed choice if it's the right time for them to be involved in the project. But I think it's about the support and space created during each session, and also the well-being and self-care importance for each of us outside the sessions. So I guess that comes back to the self-care and research infographic that's part of our toolkit, and also the well-being plan as well. So the cloud is about that trauma-informed practice that's, consistent. So I feel that's really important, creating that safe space for each person. And then the resource for the self-care plan is, if we need, if we have a counsellor, what numbers that we could call if we need to chat to someone, what activities that we find nourishing and that support our own well-being. If we have that set up from the start, I think, we'll feel better supported, and it's, going to have better outcomes for everybody through the whole process.
And Willika, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, the main thing is to not underestimate the importance of having self-care embedded within a project, and that it is part of a project that's not considered an additional extra. It's just embedded within it at all those different time points throughout. And I think just to make sure that all the members are aware of the resources, and that you what's available, and also that you revisit that regularly, that there are regular reminders, and that there's opportunities to discuss it if that's how team members wish to approach it, but also different opportunities or avenues to address that, whether that be through email, phone call, whatever that may be, or whether it's privately for some people, and therefore also linking into that safe space outside. So it is to ensure that there's a safe space for all the team members, and that is within the team environment, within the meetings, within the research setting, and then also outside, that's not affecting them outside in a negative way, and that they have self-care options outside the group as well.
Thank you. Well, we hope you found this podcast on the importance of self-care for those participating in clinical research projects valuable. There are other resources available in our information kit to support this podcast. We've mentioned some of those, but they are a self-care plan that you can complete to help you prioritise your own self-care, an acknowledgement of lived experience that can be used as part of clinical research project meetings to ensure that families who engage in research feel their experience is acknowledged and valued. Developed a word cloud that could be used as a thought starter for discussion and highlights why our group feels self-care is important, and an infographic that could be used as a thought starter for discussion and highlights some of the tips and strategies our group uses for self-care. Thanks for listening.